How well do you really know yourself? Do you understand why certain situations make you angry? Do you realize that your conflicts with a partner or colleagues might not mean you are a bad person, but simply that you don't fully understand what's happening in your own mind? After 30, many of us become more interested in personal growth, as if we suddenly feel the need to understand ourselves better. But if you're watching this video, you can think, what's wrong with me? Or what's wrong with the world around me? The good news is you are not alone in that feeling. There's actually a logical explanation for this. When we hit our 30s, our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-awareness and decision-making, fully develops. That's when we begin to shift from seeking external validation to focusing more on how we see ourselves. Of course, this isn't a strict rule. If you're an immigrant diagnosed with ADHD in your 30s and now looking back at your life, realizing things were never quite right, your self-awareness might take a completely different turn. This is happening to me. I am 36 years old, moved to a completely different country 2 years ago because of the war in my homeland, got diagnosed with ADHD, started medication and began therapy. And it's all because this feeling of being stuck in life is overwhelming my brain every single day. If this sounds familiar, welcome on board. We are the people who want to understand how to live better, and we are looking for answers. We ask the universe, friends, partners, counselors, psychiatrists, whoever has something to share. Because sometimes it feels like this struggle is too much to handle. But there's always light at the end of this tunnel. On this channel I want to share what I've learned for you, the person watching this because you feel stuck and don't understand why life feels this way. I'll be using my notebook from therapy sessions where I've written down insights we all know before, but never really paid attention to. I'm creating this channel because I want to share my experience with people who truly need it. And I also want to hear your story. So help me understand how I can improve this channel. Leave a comment below. And I want to start with this very simple and popular concept, being present. Some time ago, we produced a psychological podcast where guests share their personal stories. We try to understand why shyness and avoiding failure are such important behaviors and emotions. At those moments when our hosts would say, live in the present moment, I always thought, what bullshit we're talking about. I always believed that everyone should make life plans, create strategies, and stay a few steps ahead, being prepared for any situation. But the truth is completely different, and counseling has proved this to me so many times. The rule of a happy life is actually very simple. Be present, have no expectations, and recognize the very first signs of anxiety. I don't know which of these three rules is the most important or the hardest to follow, but for me, being present and living in the moment is the most interesting one. Like I said earlier, I always thought we needed to be prepared for everything that could happen in the future. But how is that even possible? When we talk about big corporate businesses, we insist on having a strategy for every potential disaster, like a pandemic or war. But even when both happened at the same time in Ukraine, not many businesses actually knew what to do. So how can we be sure we are ready for anything that might happen? I don't think we can. We don't know and can't control everything. That's one of the core lessons in counseling and the key to a happier life. So why should we stress over things we have no control over? How could we have predicted the COVID pandemic? How can we predict anything in the world? Yes, we can use analytics and make predictions in some cases, but in general, nobody knows anything. And that's exactly why we should live life as it is, without expectations, without anxiety, and without all the unnecessary stress we create for ourselves. Because really, how can we possibly know what will happen to our car while it's parked when we are out shopping? We hope nothing bad happens, right? But nobody can be sure. So do we really need to worry about it? Yes, we can avoid leaving bags on the front seat. Yes, we can install a security system, but we all know that there is no 100% protection against professional car thieves. So why should we be anxious about it? Shit happens all the time. Can you know exactly when it will happen to us? I can't. Can you? Not sure. That's why being present, living life right here and now is such a crucial skill we all need to develop to feel better. It's like recording audio and seeing the timeline. We don't know what waves will appear in the future. We can see past recordings, but we must be aware of what's happening right now. Not a second later, not a second before. If you want, you can listen to what you've recorded, but the recording process is still going, and will keep going until we die. And nobody knows what happens after that, right? So now is the most important moment of your life. Even if you're just sitting here watching this video, it's what you want to do. It's actually what are you doing right now. That's your life. And you are doing it, and that's already good. Thank you for that. And next, let's talk about expectations. When I started my counseling sessions, I was deeply concerned about anxiety. I thought anxiety was the main problem we all had. So, understanding what anxiety is and how our bodies react to it is also very important. And we'll talk about it later in this video. But what if I told you that anxiety isn't actually the problem? The bigger problem for us is our expectations, and it's directly connected to the previous point. But why should I avoid expectations, and how can I improve my life? I always compare modern humans with our ancestors who lived in caves, hunting, making fire and living in tribes. Our brains haven't changed much since then. Yes, we are becoming smarter as many people think, and we have all these technologies and innovations, but the foundation of our brain is still somewhere in a cave, stuck in a tribe, constantly facing dangerous situations with wild lions and bears. But did they overthink the possibility of danger? Did they expect safety? I highly doubt it. They could only expect what they could observe and predict immediately. So, if they met a wild animal, they analyzed the situation and made a simple decision based on fight or flight. They learned everything through experience, but they didn't expect anything to happen in advance. And that's exactly what kept us alive through the entire process of evolution. If our ancestors weren't fully present, I don't know if humans would even exist today. So, thanks to them for that, right? But now, we are so vulnerable. We constantly worry about things that might happen. Let's not exclude any possibilities, but we can always expect both good and bad situations. And in most cases, it's a 50-50 chance, right? So if you leave your car in a parking lot near Walmart, you might expect that someone will damage it. Or maybe not. It's 50-50. So why waste your energy on bad thoughts? Why do we even need to think about what's going to happen if we can't control it? If you're afraid that something might happen to your car, then just don't buy a car. It's that simple. Yes, sure, if you live in an unstable or unsafe area, the chances of something bad happening are higher. But look at how many people are living in war zones, polluted cities, hurricane-prone areas, and earthquake regions. Why are they still alive? You have pretty much the same chances of being killed by some random stranger as someone who lives near an active volcano. So why stress about it? I hope you get the point. Expectations are what cause anxiety because we try to avoid things that hurt us in the past. And this is exactly the problem that psychologists and other specialists are trying to help with. For example, if you had a bad relationship or went through a painful divorce, you'll probably avoid relationships in the future just to keep yourself safe. But why is that safety? Who told you that avoiding relationships will protect you? I'm working on a big video about self-esteem and failure avoidance, so subscribe to this channel to learn more and get insights from my experience. I'm exactly the kind of person who avoids everything that went wrong in the past. But when I analyzed my life, I realized that all my past failures have directly affected my present life. And the only thing that can help me is to just live here and now. Because there is no future and no past that I need to carry with me. If something bad happened in my childhood, it's just something that happened. It doesn't mean I have to experience it again today. So why should you? Before your next presentation, job interview, or business launch, ask yourself, what do I expect? If you expect something and it makes you feel bad, just remember my words. Avoid any expectations. Because the process of living in the present, right here, right now, can make your life so much easier. But if you still expect success and let's say you get rejected, your project wasn't accepted or you didn't get the job, a new setup is created in your brain. And the next time you apply for a job, launch a project or step into an interview, you'll be way more anxious. You'll have even more problems. So avoid expectations. Live your life now. What brings us to the last part of this video, understanding your anxiety. So I don't know if you practice meditation or any other form of self-awareness, but you should understand one very simple thing. Start learning about your body, your mind and yourself. We all came into this world as a blank sheet of paper, and our parents, family, society and the environment shaped us into who we are. And many of us weren't really able to learn about ourselves because of cultural restrictions, family traditions, or many other factors. But as we grow older, and usually this happens in our 30s, we start wanting to understand ourselves better. And this applies to everything. We all have a certain age when we start remembering who we are. For example, I remember being 4 or 5 years old, but at that age I couldn't analyze anything because my brain simply wasn't capable of it. I was shaped by my parents' hands and they did the best they could. No blame, they gave me the best they had, just as their parents did for them. But even though I remember my early childhood, I can say that only after turning 30 did I start realizing something was wrong. That everything could have been better. That's why I started counseling sessions. That's why I read about ADHD, got diagnosed, and finally understood why I always felt that something was wrong. That's also why I started meditation, because I knew I had to learn how to deal with stress and anxiety. And that's why I want you to find the best way to understand your body and mind. I don't want to go into a deep talk about meditation, but what I do want to tell you is this. You need to find the best way to understand one key moment in your life. The moment when you first feel anxiety. The very first moment when your body reacts to certain situations. And you must learn, you must train yourself to recognize this first note of the anxiety song your body is playing. You need to build a habit of identifying the exact moment when you start feeling angry or scared because of something. And you know what? In most situations, these emotions follow the same first melody. Remember what I said at the very beginning about fight or flight mode. Our amygdala, the part of our brain responsible for fear, is still almost identical to the one our ancestors had. And our response to dangerous situations today is almost the same as what cave people experienced. That's why meditation or any other tool you choose is so important, because it teaches you how your body responds to stress. And before you decide how to react, fight or flight, you need to first recognize that your body is sending you a signal. Something is happening. Something bad or good is happening. And if you learn to notice this moment before you react, before you let the fear take over, you gain control over your response. And you know what? It's not always about bad emotions. If you can learn how to recognize good feelings like love, joy, and excitement, you can also bring something warm and beautiful into your life. These are 3 powerful things you need to start with. Being present, avoiding expectations, and understanding how your body and mind respond to certain situations. And if you do that, you will be happy, or at least much happier than you are now. We are humans, not gods. We don't have superpowers like in Marvel movies, but we do have something else. Abilities that make some people happier than others. I don't know what your situation is right now, but I truly believe that if you want to be happy, you can make it happen. I'm not saying it's easy, but understanding yourself is the first step. Anyway, I'm not a certified doctor, I don't have the authority to give you medical advice, but I do want to help. I want to share what's on my mind, and maybe, just maybe, I can help some of you who were or are feeling lost. So, subscribe to my channel, live in the present, and let's stay in touch. See you next time.